Hello everyone and welcome to this WargamerOnline video about the Generals Handbook 2018. So Phil and Sam have already covered this very briefly in an unboxing. What we're going to do today is do a bit more of a deep dive. We're going to have a look at a few points, we're going to have a look at a few ways that you can actually now play the game, which are ways that you couldn't before. And then we're going to have a bit of discussion, see what we think of all the changes that we've had. Okay, so the first section we've got is open play games. So I don't think that we've done any of these on the channel really before, but the main idea about this is that if you want to just go have a very quick game, you're not too fussed about playing the specific tournament rules or anything like that. You can roll on a couple of tables. You can see here that they've got some various different maps, and it's just a quick way of getting together a game. The next section that it's got in the book is something I have never seen before. It sounds very interesting, but it sounds like you'd really have to plan this advance, and it's called aerial battles.
Aerial as in flying?
Aerial as in flying. So there's two different types of aerial battle. You've got what's called stratospheric aerial battles, which means that is literally just very, very high up. You're only looking at guys who are able to fly. And then you've got aerial battles where instead what you have is you have one flying level on one board and you have a second board which represents ground forces.
What?
And now these two can interact with each other.
Oh my.
But that's crazy. So you need two boards before you do anything else, and they've got lots of rules about if guys in the air get shot, they can land on the people below.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
The people below can garrison buildings and shoot at the guys in the sky.
Oh, that is so cool.
But it does sort of lend itself to particular armies over others. Because I can imagine Stormcast have got a lot of flying things. You've got the Arcanauts, they've got a lot of flying things. Seraphim, have they got many flying things?
They've got like...
Does Croak fly?
So technically, if you're near... I think it is Croak, you get the fly special rule.
Bro,
so I'm not sure how that's going to work. Like, since
just
they move away, they
the whole
fall
army
to the ground.
Yeah, keep the whole army near him or they might fall to their deaths. But that sounds really interesting, and you can kind of see here on these 2 pages, this is one of these aerial battlefields, and you've got the guys up in the sky here, and you've got the guys on the ground. Whereas if you want to do the stratospheric, it's just the one board, and that instead. And I think their idea is that you could use one board here, because you can see that if you do the aerial battle, it looks like they've taken one board and just sort of chopped it in half.
Yeah.
You might not have the luxury of playing on 2 separate tables, of course.
Well, knowing Phil, he would actually build like a special table where you had like this, and then you would actually have physically another level above it.
If you want to see that, put that in a request in the comments below, and Phil will start on an aerial board. So the next section that we're going to cover is narrative play. So the idea about this is that you might have a few different rules in order to recreate a specific story. You might have a particular hero that you want to be the focus of this story and all of the armies gathering to bring him down or something like that. Again, this is not intended for any sort of tournament play. It's more the idea of you having sort of stories, playing with your friends, and they give you a few different ideas about how you could do that. And there are other ideas, like, for example, you might have boggy ground, so unless you can fly, you can't run and things like that. Just little ways to make your game.
Like that.
Make your games a little bit different, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it had some of those in the Malign Sorcery book as well.
Yeah.
I like the kind of theme of it and just something that's a bit different.
And I think very much like you said in the video, there's no reason that you couldn't turn some of these things into match play.
Yeah.
As long as you find a way of perhaps making it fair and you agree with people beforehand.
It'd be a friendly match, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be a friendly match. Don't expect to see us in any tournament so far. Now, the next bit, and I think this is something you'd quite like, Rachel, is historical battles. So it's taking all of the books that Games Workshop's released about all of the stories so far and thinking, actually, yeah, I want to play that battle. I want to be the Stormcast holding back Nagash, or I want to be the Plague Bearers fighting over the woods in Alariel.
That's cool.
The only thing you ever might need to do on this is if you don't actually own the specific armies involved, because it's quite specific. You know, you set both sides of the opposition here. You might need to sort of substitute something else in, but the general idea I think here works well. Another thing you might have been wondering is, we've been collecting Age of Sigmar for quite a while now, and we play sort of like our sort of smaller battles. But what if you want to get together with lots of friends and just say, I want to play a ginormous game with hundreds of models?
We would totally do that.
We would totally do this. But you don't have the rules really to represent that, or if you scale up all of these rules, then the game can get a bit slow, it can get a bit clunky. And so what they've done is they brought out this section here called Gathering of Might. And what this does is it shows you exactly how you're going to play these sort of games. So like everyone gets a warlord, how you're going to work out with reserves, how the different phases, there's slight tweaks to it. So for example, if you do the hero phase when you're casting your spells, something I know you're very keen on.
Yep.
You can only cast one wizard per turn. You can only cast one spell per wizard per turn.
What?
But for every spell you haven't cast, you get +2 to your casting and unbinding. So it makes it even more likely you're going to get those spells off. And the other thing you get is something called legendary spells.
Ooh, I like the sound of those.
So let me quickly flick over to that. So each of the 4 different Grand Alliances has got one legendary spell that they can use. And if we take one of these as an example, if we take...
Order?
We do the Order one. The Order one, they've all got a casting value of 10. And the Order one here says, if you're successful, pick a friendly unit which is wholly within 18 units of the caster and visible to them. Until the start of the next hero phase, reroll all failed hit rolls for that unit, and you don't have to take any battle shock. So... That's quite a nice
decent,
one.
Isn't it?
It's decent. I like the Chaos one. So, same casting value of 10, but if successful, pick an enemy unit which is wholly within 18 units and visible. Roll a dice for every single model in the unit, and for each roll of a 4 up, it suffers a mortal wound.
That's so harsh.
That's amazing.
That is ridiculously harsh.
Yep.
My Soros Guard would just be flattened. You'd just wipe out half of my Soros Guard.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
That is insane.
And the other things you've got some legendary traits. So perhaps instead of +1 to your warlord, it's now got +3. There's a lot of arrows and cannonballs flying around. You need to be a little bit more legendary than perhaps your average general. And just things like that. So everything goes up a notch, but everything also becomes a lot quicker, a lot easier to play. And then to go along with that, they've got a few different battle plans. So these are all designed to be played with hundreds and hundreds of models, and all of the victory points are kind of worked out in that sort of similar way.
We'll need to do like a major marathon kind of thing, like a whole day set aside.
We are going to have to do a WGO big massive battle. It's got to happen, definitely. So the part which I think most people have probably come here for, it's going to be match play games. So these are most of the games you'll see. They're the games that you'll see on WGO. These are the games you play if you go to any sort of tournaments. So the main thing to note here is that the 6 original missions that you would have seen from the last Generals Handbook and before, they still exist. They are unchanged. The only difference that I could spot is that if you have a look on the Total Conquest one, the one that had the little windy path before, that has now been straightened up into nice neat edges.
Oh, good.
Because that was a pain to try and map out with dice.
Do you remember when we did the tournament and you'd spend half the game just trying to map out the map?
That was it. That took just as long to set up as to play. So I'm really glad that they've made that a lot easier to set up. What you do have, however, is you've got 6 new ones.
Yay!
So double the number. That's pretty impressive. They're all objective based, but I just want to pick out a couple which I thought were particularly interesting. The first one here is called Better Part of Valor. So it might look quite similar to perhaps something like the Scorched Ground, Scorched Earth one, in that there are 2 objectives in your area and 2 objectives in the opponent's area.
Okay.
However, you have to only score points for these when you choose to burn them to the ground. And the longer you hold them before you burn them, the more they're worth. So you've got to be really tactful. Do you just burn your own and then rush over to the enemies and try to grab theirs? Or do you try to hold on yours as long as you can and perhaps send out a little raiding force? But I think that's great.
Cool. Yeah.
And the one thing...
That's like gambling in its best form.
It is. That's going to be a very tactical one. And the thing you cannot absolutely not let your opponent do is hold it for the whole 5 rounds. Otherwise, they get 8 points for that objective.
Wow.
Whereas if you hold it and burn it after 1 turn, you get 1 point. So you can see how big it is to hold it for the whole game.
What happens though if both armies just go, yeah, I'm just going to sit on one?
Then you will go to the minor victory, which is you will add up the points of any enemy units that have been destroyed. So if you choose to sit there and do absolutely nothing, you could draw. But that would be a rather boring and fairly quick game, I guess. The other one that I wanted to cover, and the one that has it's got the prize for the most confusing map you will ever see.
Awesome.
Is this one right here. It's called Relocation Orb. There is only one objective. It starts in the middle of the board, but every turn before you start the round, you roll a dice and it moves. And where it moves to is determined by this little grid here. If you roll a 2 to a 5, it only moves one of these arrows and you can sort of tell where it goes. But if you roll a 1 or a 6, it moves and then you roll again and it moves again. And if you are holding it and it moves away from you, you've lost control of it. So you're chasing this objective around the board. And so sort of having a defensive clunky army is going to be rather difficult with this one because you're not going to be able to chase it fast. And at the same time, you're going to be chasing after this one whilst trying to harry the opponent and stop them. But
I'm taking an arrow to the knee.
Yeah, exactly. The next thing to get into is points.
Yes.
And points equals prizes. So in terms of major changes in which I've seen, the general theme seems to be for this year that wizards have gone up in points. That's perhaps unsurprising, considering the value of endless spells. Stuff has generally otherwise come down in points, although there are sort of a few particularly notable changes that I'll point out. If you're running Blades of Khorne, and I'm just going through some of the ones I'm more familiar with that I play myself, Bloodletters have gone up 10 points per 10, so they're getting more expensive again. Same for the Bloodsecrator's gone up another 20 points. To be fair, it's all of the units that you see people commonly bring. Those have all gone up in points. Everything that's a bit rarer that people perhaps didn't used to play have come down, and it's sort of trying to get that balance a bit better.
So it's not like everyone's turning up to tournaments for the same army kind of thing.
Yeah, hopefully we should see more diversity, which would be nice. Something to note for people, if you are playing Storm Vermin, there is a typo here. You'll see just here where it says Storm Vermin are between 10 and maximum unit size 30. They used to say 40 and they've dropped that down, but what they haven't done is change the maximum unit point size. So currently if you take 140 and times it by 3, that's 420. But it says here you pay 500 for 30. So you actually end up paying more, not less. But that's a typo, and I'm sure that they'll fix that up soon.
What's that?
Well, maybe they're too good.
That's maybe it.
Maybe they're too good. But generally, same as they've done in previous editions, they put a little star next to every unit that's changed. It gives you
That's quite helpful.
It is useful.
It took me way too long to figure it out.
No worries. The one to note though is Maggotkin of Nurgle doesn't have any stars. However, these have all changed, and they've all gone up in points. So sorry if you play Maggotkin, but they were pretty damn good. So I can see perhaps why that would happen. Now, looking through the points, there was a couple of things which got me really excited. The first was that War Scroll Battalions on the whole have come down. Again, the ones that perhaps you saw a lot of in the tournaments have gone up, but that's perhaps fair. They brought very good buffs. And especially now, one thing that I didn't mention on some of those, the new battle plans, is actually a lot of the time, where it used to be an objective could be held by a hero, it now says a hero with an artifact of power. So if you bring no battalions, you've got one of those, and for every battalion you bring, you get an extra artifact, so you've got another person who can hold objectives.
That's pretty cool.
Yep. And
not a lot of people were taking battalions before, really, weren't they?
Well, some of the newer books, like the Legions of Nagash, they had very cheap formations in them, and you could do it.
Yeah.
But any of the older books, Generals Handbook 2017 came in, and the points doubled on everything, and they got crazy. So yeah, no one was really taking. Or if they did, they maybe took 1 in 2,000 point games, and
Yeah.
you'd never see them in 1,000 point games because you just couldn't afford them if you want any units.
Whereas they do seem to be more attractive now.
Definitely, absolutely, definitely. The other thing to notice, and I saw this whilst looking through the Nighthaunt list, is there are actually 3 endless spells that we haven't yet seen.
Ooh!
Yeah. And with all of these guys here, well, a lot of these being new models, they'll have their unit profiles included in the box, I'm sure. But what I believe we will see is a new Nighthaunt battle tome soon. And I would bet that whenever you get a battle tome from now on, you will probably get your own endless spells for that army.
That is pretty
cool. I think.
I wonder though, so with the endless spells that anyone can cast, we can each take them over. I wonder if you cast an endless spell that's unique to your army, whether I could still take it over. I'd have thought you could, but maybe they'll, I don't know, they might surprise us.
It'll be interesting to see that. Yeah. And interesting to note, you can only bring these in that army. So you can't bring these ones. These are specific for Nighthaunt.
Aww.
And of course, what Nighthaunt get, so did the Stormcast.
I mean, you do need another Stormcast box, really, don't you?
Oh yeah.
We haven't seen one for a while.
Stormcast haven't had a battle tome in, what, 5 months or so? Time for another one. I say that, I'm really looking forward to it, because...
You are as well.
So what we can see here on the Stormcast page is there are a couple of different battalions which don't yet exist, and we've not seen anything about these, we've not heard anything about these. So again, I've got to assume a new battle tome's coming out, and you can see here that we have got 3 additional endless spells. The one I'm really particularly excited about is 100 points, and is called the Everblaze Comet. Now,
I don't like the sound of that.
That sounds pretty predatory to me.
It does sound quite predatory.
So I'm really excited for that. I think that sounds great. In terms of items that have particularly moved in points, there's a couple of other ones worth noting. If you ran Thankwall before, he's actually dropped down 50 points, which is quite considerable for him.
That is a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and considering he does an awful lot with those warp fire jets, I think you'll be seeing him on the battlefield again. The other things to note was that a Flame Spire Phoenix has actually gone up a lot of points.
That does surprise me. They're saying that we are, in my opinion, I'm expecting High Elves to be coming out shortly, or with it, certainly this year, probably maybe early next year. So it wouldn't surprise me if they've upped the points of the Flame Spire. Yeah. If that's now going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some reworks on that, because definitely what you always saw now was everyone brought the Frost Heart.
Well, that's because the Frost Heart was awesome.
It was. It was amazing. It was in a lot of the top tournament lists as well, because you could always stack every time you cast a spell, it got +1 to its save.
Yeah,
you ended up
so
with
strong.
these two up saves. I'm sure re-rolling somehow.
Even in the previous edition, before Age of Sigmar 8th, I think it was. I just always took the Frost Heart. It was just an awesome model.
So whilst otherwise I don't think we've seen any indication of War Scrolls changing, I believe we'll probably see a Flame Spire Phoenix, because that's gone now from 240 to, I believe, 360.
Wow.
It's 360 or 380.
How much is the Frost Heart then?
That one's gone up, I believe, to 280. Yeah, so we've got 380 for the Flame Spire Phoenix, and we've got 280 for the Frost Heart Phoenix. So I'm excited to see that, because the Phoenixes are gorgeous models, but you never saw the Flame Spire one.
No. So it looks like they will be looking to make those quite different then, by the sounds of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Accompanied by some beautiful models, I imagine.
The other thing to note here is, if I flick back to the Nighthaunt page, is that if you look, the Black Coach has actually gone up. It used to be 120 points, and now it's 280. So that is huge.
That is huge.
But there's a new model coming out that we saw at Forge World during the open day. The new model is gorgeous, and I imagine what they've basically said is, we're bringing out a new kit and we want it to be amazing.
Yeah.
New rules, make it amazing, but bring up the points in line.
Piece, won't it?
Yeah. So I think those are probably the big changes that I've seen in here. I'm sure other people will spot other things. I've only had a short amount of time to flick through here. But otherwise, generally what you'll see is some of the more expensive units will come down. If you like your Maw Crushers and things like that, they've all come down. Anything that's not a wizard has probably come down sort of like 10, 20 points or so, something like that. You've obviously got all of the new Stormcast and all the new Nighthaunt, which are in here, and they've all got their points. So I'm sure everyone's keen to get involved with all of that. And yeah, War Scroll Battalions are a thing again.
Yeah.
Which I'm very excited about. Because again, that just adds that extra level to your army.
Yeah.
So
they were always, I think for me, they were always interesting before, but there was always something else I'd rather take instead.
Yeah.
So now I think actually that does sound like it could be more viable.
No, definitely, 100%. So the next bit we get onto the book is all about the different bits of scenery. It's nice they've just decided to sort of include all of the different bits of rules here. And what you'll generally see is that any of the major pieces of terrain kit that they brought out, they've now associated with one of the terrain rules. So for example, an Arcane Ruin just always has the Arcane trait on it. You don't have to roll for it. Cool. Anything that's like Barbed Venom Gorse, that's dead. It sounds deadly. It's deadly. So I think it's quite nice that they include things like here. There's the old Citadel Woods and some of those ones there. Walls and Fences, the classic. And then some of the larger pieces. If we have a look at the book here again, we've got a Warscryer Citadel. This is a particularly old kit the GW did, but one of their best, I think. Well, particularly if you like skulls. It's got lots of different rules in here. And the one thing that we've got in here that I've sort of noticed, I don't believe this was a thing before, it's never a thing I saw anyone doing in any of the games, was garrisoning units, garrisoning terrain. So now if you've got sufficient number of models on the larger pieces or any number of units in the smaller ones, you can choose to garrison your unit and you sort of take your models off the board and just say they're in that building.
Okay.
You can draw a line of sight from anywhere on that building and you're -1 to shoot against.
Cool, okay.
Adds them a nice, and they're counting cover.
Yeah.
So adds a nice little bit of defence.
Yeah. Start using scenery a bit more.
Yeah, exactly. Now we get to the bit that I know you're excited for, summoning.
I was wondering when we were going to get to that. I was thinking we seem to be getting towards the end of the book now, Pink, and I know that there's summoning in there somewhere.
So
let's do this.
Cool. So the way that they've changed summoning is every time you had a war scroll that said it's got a spell with the word summoning in it.
So like my entire army.
That's all gone. They've said in there as a bit of an errata, remove all of those from the war scrolls. But you've got an alternate way of doing it instead. So the Blades of Khorne, unsurprisingly, do it through Blood Tithe points. So that's killing units or having their own units killed in turn. Disciples of Tzeentch, they do theirs by every time that you cast a spell, or your enemy casts a spell, and it's not unbound.
Seems a bit unfair.
It is, except for when you play against an army that doesn't have any magic whatsoever. Then you're going to have to be doing all the heavy lifting yourself. Every time that you cast one of those spells, you get a point. You save up points. Points mean prizes. Prizes mean free units. And of course, the main change to summoning, no reinforcement points anymore.
Yes, that's what I was looking forward to.
Yep. So as long as you've brought the model, you can bring these onto the battlefield by paying these resource points instead. And you can see here they've got examples here. So a Lord of Change costs a whopping 36 points. Fate
it's only
points.
36 points though, Pink.
That's going to be 36 spells you have to cast that haven't been unbound. So I can imagine a Tzeentch versus Tzeentch game you might get that out, but otherwise I think that you might struggle. And the other thing to notice just here for Tzeentch is that they've redone the pink horrors to blue horrors to brimstone horrors rule. So before you could do the whole splitting. So one pink horror would become 2 blue horrors, and each one of those could become a brimstone horror base. However, you had to play the reinforcement points for it, so you very rarely ever saw that.
Yeah.
The new way that they've done it is that you can do the split for free, no worry about that, but do note that all of the Tzeentch, Disciples of Tzeentch points have gone up quite considerably. Pink Horrors used to be 120, they're now 200, so there's balance
balanced it
on
out, yeah.
They get the split for free, so you just remove your Pink Horror and place 2 Blue Horrors instead. Or, if you, and I guess this is really in case you don't own the models, you can instead choose to take Petty Vengeance. You'd roll a dice for each one of your items removed, and if you roll a 6+, they take a mortal wound. So, might be worth it. Or if you're just trying to get the last few mortal wounds onto something that's quite tough and you think the Blue Horrors aren't going to cut it, you might go for that instead. And the same for the Brimstones.
Again, it's starting to make summoning more viable again, because the reinforcement points always kind of let it down for me. It was something I never really bothered with.
Yeah,
because
it was a flexible way of bringing on units, but if your wizards died or you just didn't get the cast off.
Sam's 30th battle report.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other armies that have got particularly unique summoning mechanics. I'm thinking Seraphim, I'm thinking Senesh.
Ooh.
I know you'd be excited about them. We'll get to those when we get to their allegiance abilities. They've wrapped them up into there in this book.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, getting on to allegiance abilities, what they've included here is for any of the armies who yet haven't had a battle tome, like Darkling Covens, they've included them here, the Dispossessed, the Old Dwarf Lines, and the Free Peoples. And from what I can see, comparing it to the Generals Handbook 2017, they're pretty much the same as they were before. There's a few changes to maybe artifacts of power and some of the command traits, but otherwise it's pretty much the same as it was before. If you do have the Fire Slayers, you've got a couple of battalions in there because their battle tome was sort of lacking in that area.
Okay,
it's only fair. And sort of similar for the Seraphim. So Seraphim here, again, have got a couple of different battalions.
Ooh.
And I was looking over the Seraphim ones in particular earlier. Quite a few of them have come down in points, so I think you'll be excited to have another look over those.
Oh, that is awesome.
It's pretty cool. While we are on the Seraphim, let's have a quick look at their summoning mechanics.
Yes, please.
So the way that Seraphim do it is they've got something called Celestial Conjuration. So rather than spending your wizards casting spells to actually cast spells, you can instead say that you're going to be generating these points in order to be summoning units onto the battlefield.
So instead of casting spells, I get to summon something instead.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to not cast a few spells before you've got enough points to summon. So for every spell that you don't cast with your slan, you can have 3 points towards summoning. And if we have a quick look at the table on this page here, you can sort of see how much roughly things cost. You're looking for the small bits like 10 skinks is 6 points, so that's fairly doable, especially.
Yeah, because I get 3 spells with my slan.
Exactly. And the other way that you can get points is if you've got 1 or more friendly astrolith bearers. I don't know how you could get an unfriendly one, but then you can have D3 points for them as well.
Oh, nice.
But only once, no matter how many of them you got. You can't flood them with astrolith bearers and just summon a million of the units on there. But if we have a look here, and I think one thing that Sam was particularly considering, I think he's more worried about, is that you can put your slan at the back of the army, using him as a dispel machine, and then use him to generate points every turn, and then be chucking out these effectively free units because you're not paying points for them at that point.
Yeah.
So
well, in theory, you could do that. Because you can stick him in a corner. He has the whole range of the board. No longer needs line of sight.
Yep.
Stick him in a building now, in fact.
You can garrison him in a building.
And then just spawn things.
Yep. But you are giving up your casting to do.
Yeah.
So you do have to sort of weigh it up against the points you've already played for the slan. But if you can do that, then in the long term it will pay off. So it depends how long you can last.
Can I summon a Dreadsaurian by any chance?
Dreadsaurian is not on the list, but I'm sure if you ask Forge World really nicely, they might add it on there. The other one that had a significant summoning ability was Senesh. The way that Senesh does it is through depravity. What a surprise. If you get a Keeper of Secrets goes into a line of Stormcast, and they've each got 2 wounds, and let's say he does 10 wounds to them, every other wound will kill a Stormcast, and you get no points for those. but the first wound that gets allocated to each model doesn't kill them. They're 2 wound models each.
So 5 models would basically be 5 points.
Exactly. And you can see, again, if we have a quick look at the table here, that it doesn't actually take an awful lot of points in order to summon something quite large. So against armies which have only got 1 wound, you're going to struggle to generate the points. I'm thinking things like skeletons, zombies, Skaven, things like that. Against some of the more elite armies, like Ironjaws, Stormcast, these Senesh heroes are going to go to town. They're going to get so many points. 24 points, you get to have another Keeper of Secrets.
Yay!
Which everyone loves. And that pretty much covers us off. The rest...
And that, kids, is how I met your mother.
And that pretty much covers us off. It wraps up with just the last few of the allegiance abilities. And again, Ironjaws, which was one of the first battle tomes to come out, and didn't get their War Scroll Battalions. They've got a couple of new ones. Well, so I believe there are existing ones in here. But again, so you don't have to refer to old books. And that's it.
Wow.
There's a lot in there.
There is a lot in there.
And if you play Age of Sigmar, this is an absolute must-have book. It covers everything. And if you get this, you don't need the 2017 one. You just need your battle tome, and you need this book here. And Malign Sorceries, if you want to be playing with those as well.
Yeah, I know, it looks awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah, super excited. Looking forward to all the new points. Looking forward to battalions coming back.
Looking forward to the magic and the summoning.
New battle plans, new ways of playing.
They're pretty cool. I do like the fact that we've got new battle plans.
I'm really looking forward to this big game. I think the big game that we play is going to be super fun. If you like what we've done here and you like all of the other Age of Sigmar stuff, then be sure to check out our other videos. We've got unboxing videos. Rachel's covered the endless spells and all of the
Malign Sorceries.
Malign Sorceries, thank you.
That's the word you're looking for.
That's the one I'm looking for. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button so you hear about all of the other videos coming out, and happy wargaming.
Happy wargaming!
Bye guys.
Bye!